Hello lads, lassies, and those of unspecified gender, it's the Irishman here, and today I'm going to be talking about what would have happened if Goku had become the Guardian of Earth. Let's not waste any time getting into the third iteration of this what if. I realized I made the characters a bit too overpowered in the first two versions, so we're going to choose to revamp the what if again. I know, might be a bit too soon, but hey, let's take a crack at it. Goku would be stronger than in the original once it actually comes time for the Piccolo Jr. saga, but not to an insane degree. He's more akin to what Goku was at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, and even though this is a pretty big power increase, Goku still does have a disadvantage against Piccolo Jr. He can't fly. So Goku is still on the back foot for some of the fight, but at other times he is much more on the advantage. Goku would be able to overpower Piccolo and actually pull out the victory, but suddenly Piccolo would launch a beam straight through Goku's chest, and that whole interaction actually goes basically the same as before. Goku is still massively crippled, so nothing really changes even if he's a bit stronger. Now, what would happen with Goku having a slight semblance of God Ki? This was a big part in my first and second iterations of the what if, so how does it affect the story here? Well, not much actually. Piccolo had a slight semblance of God Ki after merging with Kami, but he didn't embrace that and become godly Orange Piccolo or whatever, so really nothing should come of it here. Yes, Goku would probably be a bit more invested in the God Ki than Piccolo was, but I doubt he'd actually be able to find a way to master the God Ki like I might have stated in my second version of this tale. So Goku kind of just goes about his life as normal during the 5-year time skip. And by normal, I mean normal prior to the 5-year time skip in Dragon Ball, as Goku would never marry Chi-Chi. Instead, Goku would just be training for those 5 years on the lookout, which would lead to Goku being a bit stronger, maybe at a power level of around 900, rather than his 700 in the beginning of Z. Once Piccolo and Goku actually team up to take down Raditz, I can still see them having to resort to actually having Goku die. Which means Goku still goes to the afterlife, and he'd actually be able to go across Snake Way much faster than in the original, seeing as Goku is a bit stronger and a bit faster. Plus, honestly, now being dead while still having a connection to being the Guardian of Earth, Goku could probably just teleport to King Kai's planet, meaning he has a few extra months to train with King Kai. Meaning that once the Saiyan Saga actually begins, Goku would probably be at a power level of around 12,000, rather than his original 9,000. And yes, before any of you say it, I know it was originally 8,000, and that the 9,000 thing was actually a dubbing mistake. But, and now hear me out, I don't care, because it's funny. So, now, moving on to the Saiyan Saga, Goku would arrive at basically the same time he did originally. Whether Goku's Guardian of Earth or not, he still can't escape the bounds of death, only the Dragon Balls can do that. And yes, the Dragon Balls would still be active here, as Piccolo never died, and even with Kami not being the Guardian of Earth, he is still the holder of the Dragon Balls. Therefore, the Dragon Balls are still very much existent here. Once Goku arrives on the battlefield, he would see Piccolo fighting against Nappa, while Krillin is standing, bloody and bruised, hoping that maybe he can avenge some of his fallen comrades. Honestly, I do still think Piccolo would be the same almost neutral good that he was in the Saiyan Saga by this point, because even though he wouldn't be training with Gohan, as sadly Gohan doesn't exist here, he'd be training with Kami instead, with the rest of the Earthlings. This would mean Piccolo would get to understand what the Earthlings think like, how they act, why they are motivated, and what motivates them. This would mean that Piccolo would actually be able to be a bit more Earthling, as well as getting to train with Kami, who'd be able to show him how to be a truly good person. Now, maybe Piccolo isn't the same morally good person he was in the Saiyan Saga by this point, or at least not to the same extent, but I think he'd be pretty dang close. So, Piccolo now would be continuing to fight against Nappa. He would have never given his life for Gohan, so he's still fighting. And he's actually fighting pretty well, as Piccolo would be a quite bit stronger here. Piccolo really didn't get a chance to train in the original. He was mostly just teaching Gohan. Now, Piccolo actually does get to train with other people, which is pretty effective. So although Piccolo isn't exactly like 20,000 in terms of power level readings, he's more like 4, that's still enough to keep up with Nappa's 5,000. So everything is going somewhat well, I guess, and once Goku steps in, Piccolo would still be alive, meaning the Dragon Balls are still around here. But once Goku murders Nappa, or I guess he wouldn't murder Nappa as Vegeta would be the one to do that, Vegeta would begin his fight with Goku. And it's actually a lot more even than it was before, up until Vegeta goes into his Great Ape form. Now, at this point, it really doesn't matter if Goku is a few thousand stronger. Even if he can use Kaioken up to a slightly higher level, it won't be able to bridge the gap between him and Great Ape Vegeta. So now, all that's left is to try and hold out hope that they can survive a little longer. But now, Piccolo would actually be there to help get rid of Vegeta's tail. And he would do just that. Using a Destructo Disc with Krillin, together, they would be able to slice off Vegeta's tail, and then Vegeta would be pissed. So, while still remaining some of his Great Ape power left in him, he would launch an attack at Piccolo that would gravely injure him. In fact, he's on the verge of death. But Vegeta's not much better, as he is now extremely weakened. Goku is in better condition than before, but not by too much, so Vegeta is still somewhat actually dominant here, as Piccolo was the only person who really stood a chance against him, and now he's on the verge of death. So what happens? Well, Krillin would be a bit stronger here, having trained with Piccolo. So, considering how weakened Vegeta is, if Krillin got a Senzu Bean from Goku like he did originally, he might actually be able to stand a chance against this heavily weakened Vegeta. And that's how I see this going. Krillin would begin to fight alongside Vegeta, actually being able to weaken him more, and although it's somewhat even, Vegeta just can't hold up. His body is beginning to break down. So then Krillin would prepare to slice him, killing him once and for all with Yajirobe's sword, and then Goku would say no. Let him go. Goku will be the one to defeat him now, and he really isn't a threat anymore. Once Goku recovers, he should be stronger than even Vegeta, and since he can't use the Great Ape form, Vegeta isn't even a threat. There's no point in taking another person's life. Let's not become as bad as the monster we seek to destroy. So then, Vegeta would leave. Krillin is dumbfounded on why Goku would still let him leave, but I guess it makes sense. But as we all know, Goku really just kind of wanted another fight, and appealing to the moral side of it was probably the only way he'd be able to get Krillin not to kill Vegeta. Then, for a bit, the story would continue as normal. They wouldn't be able to save Piccolo's life, and if you're wondering why, it's because I need the Namek Saga to happen. So, Goku would be brought to a hospital with Krillin and the two would recover. After a while, Bulma would say that they'd be able to create a spaceship that'd be able to bring them to Namek, a place Krillin would have brought up after hearing about it from Nappa, and Goku would say that they should go first, and once a better ship is created, or maybe another mode of transportation is ready, once Goku is ready to go, then he'll follow close after. And then that would basically just happen. Everyone would go to Namek while Goku is still recovering, and Bulma and Krillin would actually be able to connect more. Not in a romantic way, no, not at all, but as friends. Remember, Krillin and Bulma are actually pretty close friends. They went through a lot together, so it'd be nice to see them actually get to bond a bit. Once they arrive on Namek, the story would continue basically the same as before, except every time Gohan was like, hey, let's go save those people, hey, let's intervene there, well, that wouldn't happen. Krillin would decide not to intervene as it could go very badly for them, and since Gohan isn't here, and therefore there's not another person to help fight, yeah, it probably would go very badly for them. Now, even without Gohan there, I do still believe they'd be able to get through the Namek Saga at least relatively the same. I feel like they'd be able to survive long enough, and without getting into too much trouble, everything should go basically the same as it did before, except there's just a lot less stakes for the Earthlings. Vegeta, however, does still face the same troubles, and would be able to kill Qui and Doria, get beat by Zarbon, recover in the healing capsule, and then beat Zarbon. Krillin would get his potential unlocked, Vegeta would arrive, and then they would sense the Ginyus arriving. And this is actually a bit problematic. Although I feel like the Ginyus would still toy with them and they would still be able to actually survive, they would get beaten much, much harsher, as the Ginyus wouldn't have another person to focus on. In fact, if I didn't need both of these characters for later, I would probably say that one of them might actually die, and I'd go with Vegeta as he was the person they were focusing on most. But hey, Goku would still be able to arrive on the planet and then take care of the rest of the Ginyu Force. So it'd definitely be a close call, but I don't think it's too much of a stretch of the imagination to say they'd be able to hold out for a little longer, even without Gohan there. Now, once Goku is actually there, he would be a decent amount stronger, at a power level of around 120,000 rather than his original, 90,000? It might have been 100,000. Either way, Goku is at a power level of around 120,000, which is the same as Ginyu. And that means in base form, Goku is equal to Ginyu, and then in Kaioken, he's even stronger. But still, Ginyu would swap bodies with Goku, and Vegeta has to hold him off. And considering how weak Ginyu was, yeah, actually, Vegeta is able to do it with no problem. Now, there is a pretty big change from a relatively small plot point. Goku, once being brought back into his own body, would have an extra Senzu Bean. Goku would have brought the same amount as he would originally, and since he never needs to give one to Gohan to save his life, Goku's back up to his power level of 3 million, in fact up to about 3.5 million, right away. Meaning that once the wishes are made on the Dragon Balls, Piccolo doesn't need to come to Namek, seeing as they don't need any help to fend off anybody. But because I still feel like Piccolo would want to come to Namek, the wish would still be made, and Piccolo would be brought there. Now, the next person to be revived would be Chaozu, as he can't be brought back with the Earth Dragon Balls. Now, since Krillin was never dead, they can just revive everybody else with the Earth Dragon Balls, and everything will be okay. And that's what Popo would be doing, while Goku is fighting against Frieza. And Goku versus Frieza might actually go a lot better than you might think. The first form Frieza is no challenge for Goku, second form a little bit of a challenge, but not really. Once Goku actually acclimates to his 3.5 million power level, even third form Frieza isn't much to him. But then Frieza's true form, or final form, is actually enough to give Goku a challenge, and a pretty big one at that. Once Goku actually is pushed into using Kaioken times 20, Frieza would be at a power level of around 75 million, using more than half of his power. So, yeah, no, Frieza's a bit skeptical. Could this person actually be the Super Saiyan? And with everything Vegeta is saying, it seems as if he is. So, Frieza would get pissed, and then launch an attack straight at Goku, a Death Ball. And in Kaioken times 25, and given Goku's slightly stronger body, he'd be able to handle it, the Death Ball is pushed back, and by a Kamehameha, which would then go straight into Frieza's face, exploding the Death Ball, and the Kamehameha would finish the Emperor off. Or so they would think. Much like the Spirit Bomb, everyone would begin to rejoice thinking that Frieza was finally defeated, but then Frieza would kill Krillin. Now this is where things get a bit more interesting. Goku would power up into the power of Super Saiyan, and a red aura would begin to eclipse him, but not Kaioken. Instead, that little bit of God Ki I was talking about. The red aura would begin to shift to blue, and even though Goku isn't awakening Super Saiyan Blue, he's getting something somewhat similar. And now, given this increased Super Saiyan form, almost similar to Super Saiyan Rage in terms of power, Goku would be able to take down Frieza with relative ease. In fact, I'll say that the form Goku unlocks here is actually Super Saiyan Rage. You might be wondering why? Well, it's because Goku would have about as much God Ki as Trunks would. Having been exposed to other godly Saiyans, Trunks would have gotten a slight amount of God Ki, at least I believe he would have, and that's why he was able to unlock a form strong enough to actually hold back Super Saiyan Rose Goku Black. Not because he had a rage boost that was so cool it gave him a new form, but because he unlocked a new godly transformation, which is something Goku would do here. And now with this new godly almost kind of form activated, Goku would blast away Frieza without even an ounce of effort. And then everyone would head back to Earth, as all of the Earthlings and all of the Namekians are actually revived. Everything is going pretty hunky-dory, and Vegeta wants to unlock that same form Goku did, believing it to be the Super Saiyan form of legend. And Vegeta would actually be able to do it. Although it takes a few years, he would unlock Super Saiyan. Now, Goku would only really be able to tap into the original Super Saiyan form, as the Super Saiyan Rage form he unlocked was seeming to be a one-time thing, but it was still incredibly powerful and could get him out of a pinch. So Goku would continue to train as the Guardian of Earth, protecting it from any possible threats. Now, once the Android Saga actually does happen, and the future Trunks encounter goes basically the same as before, don't worry, it would actually have a pretty interesting outcome. Dr. Gero would arrive with Android 19, and then they would get absolutely destroyed, same as in the original, with Goku having the heart virus activated. 1718 would come out, and most of the Cell Saga actually goes about the same as before up until Goku wakes up. Although, there's a pretty big difference with Cell. Cell wouldn't be from a different timeline. No, that Cell would actually be killed and drank by our Cell, the Cell in this timeline, who would actually have gotten out of development a lot sooner, having gotten a brief understanding of God Ki, which would actually push him to being far stronger and far more developed at a much faster pace. Then this Cell would go after the two androids, and Goku, sensing this power, would have his God Ki flare up, which would save him from the heart virus. But he still senses this insane power and needs to go and try and stop it. So Goku would see Cell and see him absorbing both of the androids, achieving perfection, and oh no, they might be screwed, but Goku has an idea. He just has to appeal to Cell's Goku side, the side that wants a good fight above all else, and Cell actually takes the bait, saying they have 10 days, just 10 days, to actually get strong enough to maybe provide a challenge, as nobody else in the cosmos would probably be able to. And this is just enough time, as Goku has something that would actually be able to allow them to grow strong enough to fight Cell right now, in those 10 days. The Room of Spirit and Time. Seeing as Gohan doesn't exist here, Goku would go into the Room of Spirit and Time with Vegeta, and the two of them would train for a few years, getting as strong as possible. Goku would unlock his Super Saiyan Rage form and be able to activate it at will, seeing as this is the only thing that could possibly push him up to Cell's level. And then, Vegeta would unlock something similar but different. He would unlock almost kind of like a pink-haired Super Saiyan form, basically false Super Saiyan Rose, as I want to give him a Super Saiyan God-like transformation, but I don't want to give him Super Saiyan God. And since it was confirmed in the Lord Slug movie to a certain extent that there are false variants of Super Saiyan forms, let's say Super Saiyan Rose or Super Saiyan God, either one, but I'm going with Rose, has a false variant, and Vegeta would unlock that. And it's about as strong as Super Saiyan Rage. So, the two of them would actually exit the time chamber after mastering these two forms. They're not sure if they're actually strong enough to fight against this superpowered Cell, but they hope they are. Neither of them want to actually go back inside the Room of Spirit and Time, not because it was too hard, but because they realize no amount of training would be able to actually break this gap. They have to find some other way to push past this limiter that they've had placed on themselves, and they suspect that actually doing meditation and relaxing, making sure their bodies are in peak physical condition, would probably be the best way to do that. If they are willing to actually burst through their limits in the Cell fight, or if their bodies are actually allowing them to, then they're going to need to be at peak physical condition, and training themselves to the bone wouldn't actually do that. So now they would relax. But now Piccolo and Trunks would actually go into the time chamber together, and they would get incredibly powerful. Trunks would actually awaken Super Saiyan 2 and would get strong enough to where he's at least somewhat comparable to the rest of the Z Fighters, but not actually enough. And by the rest of the Z Fighters, I mostly mean Goku and Vegeta. The Super Saiyan 2 form, when mastered to the same extent Trunks would, as well as his hybrid potential, would allow him to get up to their level, but they're not as strong as Goku and Vegeta just yet. Piccolo, on the other hand, wouldn't actually be as strong. He'd mostly just be a teacher for Trunks, but he is still incredibly powerful in his own right. Don't think I'm undermining Piccolo. He is one of my favorite characters. There's just not much I can really say to actually give Piccolo any sort of new power to actually make him more relevant here. So Piccolo would basically just be kept on the sidelines like in the original. And once the Cell saga actually does begin and the Cell games start, well, it would actually be pretty interesting. Goku would fight against Cell, and he would be impressed. Cell would actually get a proper challenge, and he is having the time of his life. It's so exhilarating, so exciting. This power, it's like nothing he's ever felt before, and it's actually pushing Cell beyond his limits. But Goku would say they had an ace in the hole. If Cell wants a proper challenge, somebody who could give him the real best fight of his life, somebody who could squash him like the bug he is, just to give him and Vegeta a few minutes. And then Cell would accept this request, wanting to see what they could possibly have in mind that would make Cell so obsolete in terms of power. And Goku would walk over, telling Vegeta that they're about to do with a practice during the 10 days, or more like 7 days outside of the time chamber. Then Goku and Vegeta would get into position and do the fusion dance, much to Vegeta's chagrin, but hey, Vegeta gets to be the strongest person alive for a few seconds with Kakarot, so it's worth it. Then the two would combine, and they would have flowing pink hair with the blue aura around them. They've unlocked Super Saiyan Rose Rage. Now, it's not actually as strong as anybody in Super, as, come on, I don't want to make them too overpowered just yet, that's not the point of this what if, but they are still incredibly powerful, and Cell is amazed. He would say that he was actually holding something out, saying that he had found something deep inside of his DNA that would have allowed him to end all of them within a matter of moments. But he didn't want to actually do it, as he wanted a proper challenge. But now seeing this, he might actually be able to use every part of himself and actually be able to get a proper challenge out of it. Then Cell would power up and enter a golden-like form, saying that although he can't use any Super Saiyan transformations, it turns out their old friend Frieza had a few forms under his belt, and now Cell has unlocked one of them. But don't think that Cell is actually going to become good if he loses, wanting a better fight later or trying to see the full extent of Gogeta's power. No, one of them is dying and one of them isn't. That's how this is going to work. And Cell is pretty confident he's going to be the one that survives. But at this point, he really doesn't know. And the two would enter a deadlock. Cell would actually be stronger at first, but as the fight goes on, his power would be draining significantly. He doesn't have the same infinite energy engine 17-18 had, so he can't maintain the golden form. Frieza couldn't, so Cell probably can't as well. Even with his regeneration, that doesn't mean he regenerates stamina, just his health. So Cell is actually getting much weaker, extremely fast. Eventually he would fall out of the golden form, and it seems as if the fight is over. But then Gogeta would defuse. Yes, they had mastered the fusion dance, and they were able to do it flawlessly over and over again, but now they defused. No matter how much you perfect the fusion dance, you don't get extra time. So now, the two of them are screwed. Cell was still superior to them in terms of power, but they'd realize Cell is heavily weakened as well. So Goku and Vegeta fighting alongside one another against Cell would actually be able to get the upper hand. And using a final Kamehameha in conjunction with one another, seeing that Vegeta has actually fully become a good person now, they would eradicate Cell. Every last bit of him. There's no return in this time, buddy. So, now, Goku and Vegeta would fall to the ground, out of breath, but still very much alive. They had won. But Cell would laugh to himself, knowing that they had to fuse to beat him. Meaning that he really was the strongest. And that's where we're going to be ending things for today. I hope you enjoyed the third iteration of this What If, as I really wanted to get it right this time. The other two were fine, and I did enjoy making them as well, but I realized that there were some problems I needed to kink out. And here I feel like I did that. I hope you enjoyed, and if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. This is, always has been, and always will be the Irishman. Talk to you later. Bye.